You ever notice how the loudest power isn't the one that shouts, it's the one that says nothing at all? Silence, it's not weakness, it's strength. And when a woman stops chasing, stops explaining, stops begging to be understood, something shifts. Suddenly, everything around her starts moving in her favor. Men pay attention. Life rearranges itself. And the truth is, when you focus on yourself and let silence speak, everything starts to fall exactly where it should. When you go silent, you create something far more powerful than any argument, any text message, or any desperate attempt to be understood. You create curiosity. And curiosity is magnetic. Think about it. When someone constantly explains themselves, constantly lays out their feelings, constantly reacts to everything you say or do, you don't really wonder what's going on inside of them, do you? Because you already know. They've handed it all over. There's no mystery, no space for your imagination to wander. But when someone pulls back, when they stop feeding into the drama, when they stop responding the way they used to, suddenly your mind starts racing. You begin to wonder, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Why aren't they reacting the way they used to? That's exactly what happens when a woman chooses silence. It's not that she doesn't care anymore. It's that she's learned caring doesn't mean chasing. She's learned that attention given too freely loses its value. And when she steps back, when she takes her energy and redirects it inward, the people who once took her presence for granted can't help but notice her absence. It's almost like silence echoes louder than words ever could. It makes people sit with themselves. It makes them uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, they realize the weight of what they had, the weight of what they may be losing. You see, silence has this way of shifting the balance of power. As long as you're the one reaching out, explaining, apologizing, over-communicating, you're handing all the power away. You're saying, here, take my peace of mind, take my energy, take my self-respect. But when you decide to hold that back, when you decide to say nothing, you take that power and put it right back in your own hands. Suddenly, you're not the one chasing answers. They are. You're not the one filling the silence. They're the ones scrambling to make sense of it. And let's be honest, silence takes strength. It's easy to lash out. It's easy to send that long text. It's easy to argue just to prove your point. What's hard is sitting with your emotions, sitting with that urge to react, and choosing not to. That's strength. That's self-control. And that's what makes people take notice, because silence forces others to confront their own behavior. It leaves space for accountability. It says without words, I don't need to fight for my worth. My worth is already intact, whether you see it or not. Now here's the interesting part. When you stop giving away explanations, when you stop reacting, people don't just get curious about the silence, they get curious about you. They start watching you more closely. They start wondering what's different about you. Why aren't you chasing? Why aren't you explaining? Why aren't you reacting? And that curiosity naturally pulls them in closer. It shifts the dynamic without you ever lifting a finger. But the most important thing is this: it's not about playing games. It's not about going silent just to manipulate someone into missing you. It's about understanding the value of your presence, your words, your energy, and not handing it over carelessly. When you focus on yourself and you stay silent in the moments that don't deserve your voice, you protect your peace and you raise your value without even trying. And in that quiet space, you'll notice something incredible start to happen. The very things and people you once chased start to come chasing after you. Because silence doesn't just create curiosity, it creates gravity. And gravity always pulls things back in. When you finally shift the focus back onto yourself, everything around you begins to change. You start to realize that the time and energy you were pouring into someone else, into fixing situations, into chasing answers, was the very energy you should have been using to build yourself. And the moment you do that, when you stop begging to be chosen and instead choose yourself, you instantly raise your value, not just in their eyes, but more importantly, in your own. See, people can sense where your focus is. They can feel when all your attention is on them, when every move you make is based on how they'll respond, when your entire mood depends on what they do or don't do. That kind of energy, even if it comes from love or care, ends up being suffocating. It lowers your value because it communicates one thing: my worth depends on you. And the second someone feels that, they stop appreciating it. But when you pull that focus back to yourself, when you invest that energy into your growth, your peace, your joy, something shifts. You send a new message: I am whole, whether you're here or not. And that's the most attractive energy you could ever put into the world. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone who was genuinely confident, genuinely focused on their own goals, their own happiness, their own life, and thought, wow, they need to do more chasing? No, you admire them. You respect them. You're drawn to them. That's what happens when you stop pouring yourself out and start pouring into yourself. You become magnetic without even trying. And focusing on yourself doesn't mean being selfish. It doesn't mean shutting people out or ignoring love. It means making sure your cup is full before you start pouring into anyone else's. It means remembering that your peace is your responsibility, your happiness is your responsibility, and your growth is your responsibility. Because the truth is, no one else can give you those things. And when you depend on someone else to provide them, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But when you give them to yourself, when you become your own source of love and stability, you raise your value in a way no one can take away. People respect what they see you respect. If you respect yourself enough to set boundaries, they respect those boundaries. If you respect yourself enough to walk away from what doesn't serve you, they notice. And if you respect yourself enough to focus on your own growth, instead of chasing someone who's not meeting you halfway, they can't help but see the difference. That shift is powerful. That shift is what makes people stop, pay attention, and sometimes even chase the very thing they once overlooked. What's even more powerful is how this change feels inside of you. When you focus on yourself, you stop being reactive. You stop living at the mercy of someone else's moods, actions, or decisions. You gain control of your own story. You wake up and ask, what do I need today? What makes me feel alive? What helps me grow? And as you start answering those questions and acting on them, you feel stronger. You feel lighter. You feel like yourself again. And here's the beauty of it. When you raise your value in your own eyes, the world adjusts to meet it. Opportunities find you. Relationships that are meant for you align with you. Respect follows you. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to chase it, because it naturally gravitates towards someone who knows their worth and lives like it. When you focus on yourself, you don't lose people who matter. You lose people who never deserved the front row in the first place. And what you gain is a version of you that no one can ignore. Silence is more than just not speaking. It's a form of protection. It's how you guard your peace in a world that constantly tries to steal it. Every unnecessary argument, every attempt to prove yourself, every back and forth that goes nowhere, it all drains you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not engage. Not because you don't have words to say, but because you know your peace is worth more than being right in the moment. We've all been there, where someone pushes your buttons, where someone disrespects your effort, where someone tries to drag you into an argument that only leaves you exhausted. And what do we usually do? We react, we defend, we explain, but afterwards, you don't feel better. You feel drained. You feel like you gave away a piece of yourself just to get them to understand something they were never going to understand in the first place. That's the trap. And silence is the way out. Silence says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it. It says, your chaos won't disturb my calm. It says, I value my peace more than I value your approval. That's powerful, because when you stop feeding into negativity, when you stop trying to match someone's disrespect with explanations, you keep control of yourself. You keep control of your emotions, and that's the highest form of strength. It's not about walking away every single time. It's about choosing wisely. You don't need to respond to every little thing. Not everything deserves your reaction. Sometimes silence is the loudest response you can give because it forces the other person to sit with themselves. And in that silence, you don't lose power, you gain it. You show that you are untouchable, that your peace is not up for negotiation. And protecting your peace doesn't just mean ignoring arguments. It also means creating space in your life where you can actually breathe, where you're not constantly tied up in drama, constantly chasing answers, constantly giving people the power to decide how you feel. When you choose silence, you create room for clarity. You give yourself the freedom to think, to process, to hear your own voice again. That's when you start realizing what really matters and what's just noise. Because here's the truth. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every person deserves access to your energy. You don't owe anyone constant explanations. You don't owe anyone every piece of yourself. Protecting your peace is about knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to engage and when to let go. That balance is where your strength lies. And let me tell you, people notice. They notice when you stop reacting the way you used to. They notice when you don't get pulled into every argument, when you're not easily shaken, when you're not quick to defend yourself. That calm confidence, it speaks louder than words ever could. And ironically, it earns more respect than any argument ever will. Protecting your peace is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves a share of it. It's choosing to stay grounded while everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. And when you master that, you don't just keep your peace. You set the standard for how the world treats you. Because the moment you choose silence over chaos, you win twice. You protect your peace, and you prove that nothing is strong enough to take it from you. Respect always starts with you. People treat you based on the standard you set, not the words you say. You can tell someone 100 times how you want to be treated, but if your actions show that you'll tolerate less, they'll give you less. Respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you embody. And when you shift your focus inward, when you stand firm in who you are and stop chasing validation, that respect begins to rise naturally. Think about it. If you constantly explain yourself, constantly chase after someone's approval, constantly try to prove your worth, what you're really communicating is, I don't fully believe I'm enough. And when people sense that, they treat you accordingly. But when you move differently, when you carry yourself with calm confidence, when you stop needing to be chosen, when you're willing to walk away from what doesn't honor you, suddenly the way people see you shifts. They realize they can't take you for granted. They realize they have to rise to meet you because you're no longer lowering yourself to meet them. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's quiet. It's in your boundaries. It's in the way you say no without over-explaining. It's in the way you don't chase after what keeps slipping away. It's in the way you choose silence instead of chaos and peace instead of drama. That kind of composure earns more respect than any demand ever could. And here's the thing, when you respect yourself, you stop being afraid of losing people. You understand that anyone who walks away because you chose yourself was never meant to stay. That kind of freedom makes you powerful because you're no longer negotiating your worth. You're no longer begging for a seat at the table. You're no longer settling for half love or half effort. You show up fully and you expect others to do the same. That expectation isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. Respect also comes from consistency. When you say one thing but do another, when you set a boundary but let it slide the moment someone pushes, you're teaching them that your words don't hold weight. But when you hold the line, when your actions match your standards, people notice. They may not like it at first, especially if they benefited from the old version of you that gave too much and accepted too little. But over time they adjust. Because the truth is, people only rise to the standard you allow them to. It's not about shutting people out or being cold. It's about understanding that you teach people how to treat you. And the first lesson always comes from how you treat yourself. If you neglect yourself, they will too. If you value yourself, they'll be forced to respect that. The energy you carry speaks louder than any demand, and it sets the tone for every relationship in your life. And the best part, when you respect yourself, you don't just attract better treatment from others, you also attract better opportunities, better relationships, better energy. Because when you stop settling for less, you create space for more. You create room for the kind of love, the kind of respect, the kind of life that aligns with who you really are. Self-respect isn't selfish, it's essential. And once you truly embody it, you won't have to beg for respect from anyone else. It will already be there because you demanded it without saying a word. Distance has a way of revealing truths that words never could. When you step back, when you stop filling every gap with explanations, with calls, with texts, you create silence that forces the other person to sit with themselves. And in that space, they begin to reflect. They start to notice what's missing, and it's usually the very things they once overlooked. Because here's the reality: when someone always has you, always hears from you, always knows you'll be there no matter what, they stop appreciating it. It becomes expected. But when you remove yourself from the constant giving, from the constant availability, the weight of your absence finally hits. Reflection doesn't happen when things are too loud. It happens in the quiet. And when you step back, you give the other person no choice but to face the silence you've left behind. That's when thoughts creep in. That's when questions start forming. Why isn't she reaching out? Why does it feel different? What did I do to make her pull back? And those questions, those restless thoughts, are powerful because they're not coming from you anymore. They're coming from within them. The thing about distance is it doesn't just highlight what they miss. It highlights what they've taken for granted. Maybe it's the comfort of your presence. Maybe it's the security of your support. Maybe it's the way you cared without them asking. Whatever it is, distance shines a light on it. And suddenly, the things they brushed off don't feel so small anymore. They start realizing that the attention, the effort, the love, they weren't guaranteed. They were gifts. And gifts aren't owed, they're given. But distance also gives you something even more valuable. It gives you perspective. When you step back, you get to see things clearly. You start to notice patterns you couldn't see when you were too close. You begin to feel the weight lift off your shoulders when you're no longer trying to force what doesn't flow. And in that space, you realize what you truly deserve. You see the difference between someone who values you and someone who just benefits from your presence. That clarity is priceless because it puts you back in control of your choices. Distance is not about punishment. It's not about playing games. It's about balance. It's about saying, I've given enough, now it's time for me to give to myself. It's about creating space so that love, respect, and effort can either grow or reveal their absence. And here's the truth. If the relationship is meant to be, that distance will only strengthen it, because it will push the other person to step up, to reflect, to meet you where you deserve to be met. And if it's not meant to be, then that space will make it clear faster than any argument ever could. And isn't that the point? To stop wasting your energy where it isn't reciprocated and to allow the things that are truly for you to find you. When you stop chasing and start creating distance, you don't lose anything worth keeping. You only lose what wasn't strong enough to last. And in return, you gain clarity, peace, and the respect that comes from finally choosing yourself. Because distance isn't the end. It's the beginning of seeing the truth. The moment you decide to align with yourself, everything else starts to align too. Life has a way of falling into place when you stop fighting for what doesn't fit and choosing what feels right for your soul. For so long, many of us believe that happiness, love, and peace are things we get from outside of ourselves. We chase people, we chase validation, we chase approval, thinking that if we just have that one thing, or that one person, everything will make sense. But it never really works that way, because the truth is, nothing outside of you can create alignment if inside you're scattered, empty, or unsettled. When you begin to choose yourself, your growth, your well-being, your peace, you stop searching outward and start building inward. And that's when things shift. That's when you realize the power isn't in who comes or who goes, but in how steady you remain regardless. Alignment is about recognizing that you don't have to force anything. What's meant for you will meet you halfway, and what isn't will fall away. And as painful as that can feel in the moment, it's actually a blessing because it clears the space for better. When you're aligned with yourself, you carry a different kind of energy. It's calm, it's confident, it's steady. You're not easily shaken by someone pulling away because your identity isn't tied to their presence. You're not desperate to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And here's what happens. People can feel that. They can feel the difference between someone who's grounded and someone who's grasping. And that kind of inner strength pulls the right things toward you almost effortlessly. The relationships that aren't right for you, they begin to fade. The opportunities that don't serve you, they stop showing up, and the ones that do, they find their way into your life without you having to chase. Because alignment doesn't attract what you want. It attracts what matches who you are. And when you focus on yourself, when you silence the noise, when you decide to live in your own peace, you raise your frequency. You create a standard. And only the people, opportunities, and experiences that match that standard will stick. It doesn't mean life suddenly becomes perfect. It doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. But the difference is, you'll be approaching those challenges from a place of strength instead of desperation, from peace instead of chaos. And that makes all the difference. Because when you're aligned, even the storms don't shake you the way they used to. You don't break, you bend, you adapt, you grow. And when the storm passes, you're still standing, stronger than before. Alignment also teaches patience. It reminds you that you don't have to rush the process. You don't have to force doors open or chase after people who shut you out. You can trust the timing of your life. You can trust that by choosing yourself, you've already set the foundation for everything else to fall into place. And that trust, that faith in yourself and in the process, gives you peace that no relationship, no approval, no outside validation ever could. So if you've ever wondered when things will start making sense, when the pieces will finally come together, the answer is simple: it starts when you do. When you align with your own worth, your own peace, your own growth, the world around you has no choice but to adjust. Because the moment you find alignment within yourself, everything else finds its place around you.